Imagine being able to give your child a head start before they're even born. No genetic diseases, no inherited conditions, just a healthier, stronger version of the child you already love. That is the promise that CRISPR-Cas9 is making to parents right now, and it's genuinely an exciting one. But before you make a decision that is permanent, heritable, and irreversible, there are some things you need to hear first. Because the question is not whether CRISPR will one day be safe and ethical enough for elective use. The question is whether it is there yet. And right now, currently, the answer is no. So what exactly is CRISPR? CRISPR-Cas9, which stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats, is a gene editing tool that allows scientists to target and modify specific segments of DNA in living organisms with remarkable precision. It was first identified in E. coli bacteria in 1987, but it was not until 2012 that researchers published a paper that showed its true potential for editing human genes. In 2020, Emmanuel Charbonnet and Jennifer Duanda were awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for their work in advancing this very technology. And in 2023, the FDA approved Casgevy, which is the world's first CRISPR-based medicine, as a treatment for sickle cell anemia, a genuine breakthrough that has given hope to millions of currently suffering patients. So yes, CRISPR does work. In the right context, it is extraordinary what it can do. But there is a critical difference between treating a consenting patient with a serious medical condition and editing an embryo that has no voice, no choice, and no ability to say no. This brings us to the most fundamental problem with elective embryo editing: consent. When a result receives Casgevy for sickle cell anemia, they understand the risk, they evaluate their options, and they make an informed, proper decision. An embryo simply cannot do any of that. Researchers Laboud et al., writing in the CRISPR journal, found the existing ethical guidelines on germline gene editing to largely fail to account for the inherent vulnerability of an embryo, the subject who is most permanently affected by the modification. This is not a minor procedural gap. This is a foundational ethical failure. You would not make a permanent, life-altering medical decision on behalf of your child without their knowledge or consent. And yet, elective embryo editing asks us to do exactly that before the person even exists enough to weigh in. Whatever modifications is made becomes a part of that child forever, and every child they will have in the future. And here's the thing. Even if we resolve the consent problem tomorrow, the science itself is simply not ready. Duragi et al., in their 2026 review of CRISPR's therapeutic applications, acknowledged that off-target mutations remain a significant and unresolved concern within the CRISPR community. That means CRISPR can accidentally alter segments of DNA it was never directed to edit, with consequences that are not always predictable and cannot always be corrected. Adult patient unexpected outcomes can be monitored and managed fairly easily, but in an embryo, there is no such safety net. The most infamous example of what happens when science moves too faster than the ethics is that of He Jiankui, who is a Chinese researcher who edited human embryos to confer HIV resistance, a modification the embryos did not need for any existing disease. The scientific community condemned it almost universally, and He Jiankui is currently sentenced to 3 years in prison. That experiment is a warning, should not be a model. Beyond the individual risk, there is a broader social cost to consider. Disability scholars Sandy Sullivan and Rosemary Garland Thompson warned that CRISPR's ability to edit out genetic differences from the gene pool is a direct threat to disabled communities who are already judged by society as being biologically inferior. They call this velvet eugenics, which is the idea that genetic discrimination enforced not by the state, but by individual consumer choices are hidden behind the language of voluntary consent and patient autonomy. But it's still eugenics. And when you combine that with the economic reality that CRISPR-based medications cost on average $2.2 million per treatment, gene editing risks will create a society divided not just by wealth, but also by genetic advantage, where the rich can afford to just design their children to be the best possible biological person, while everyone else goes out without treatment for serious medical conditions. Carson Viano, writing on CRISPR's landscape in America, connects this directly to the history of the Supreme Court case Buck v. Bell that legally forced sterilization to anyone seemed genetically unfit. History has already shown us that where this road will eventually lead when we let genetic improvement go unchecked. None of this means CRISPR is evil. It means CRISPR is very powerful, and power without adequate oversight is extremely dangerous. If your child has a serious genetic disease, therapeutic CRISPR treatments like Casgevy represent a genuine promising frontier, developed through years of rigorous clinical trials and available to consenting patients. This is a conversation worth having with your doctor. But elective embryo editing, the modification of genes to confer enhancements or protections that are not currently needed, is a different matter entirely. A systematic review of 223 scholarly publications found that the majority of researchers currently believe oversight mechanisms are wholly inadequate to govern this growing technology. Until international ethical frameworks, equitable access, and fully reliable editing tools are in place, choosing elective embryo editing means a permanent decision in the middle of an currently unfinished conversation. CRISPR will almost certainly be a transformative force in medicine, but the best thing parents can currently do is wait. Not forever, but until the science, the ethics, and the oversight catches up to the current promise. Your child deserves a future shaped by informed, careful, and ethical science. And the future is coming, just not here quite yet, sadly. Here's my works cited. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this helped you become more informed on your decision.